topic tonight, and it's one of the Beatitudes, but it it it's not usually given a whole lot of detail, um, because it's one of the other Beatitudes, and you'll be blessed. However, um, Dr. Lomsa, in his book, The Kingdom of Heaven on Earth, uh, does a really great job of building other scriptures around the idea the idea of mercy. So we start off with a definition of mercy, and right away, now again, I always go to definitions other than the Bible, just just for starters. Uh, Sometimes they're different, sometimes they're same and similar. In this case, they're very similar. So, uh, so a couple of, well, three actually, uh, definitions that are food for thought. Mercy is compassion or forgiveness shown towards someone whom it is within one's power to punish or harm. Now, of course, we we think of mercy, we think of a judge showing mercy to somebody and whatnot. That's one, that's one part of it, but that's not um, the real thing, the real message. Okay, and the idea of mercy is that we're inclined to treat other people with kindness and forgiveness. Okay, and of course, it's a disposition to forgive or show compassion. So we have a whole mixture of terminology here, um, and so as soon as we recognized compassion, compassion and mercy, I mean, they're pretty much the same thing. They go hand in hand. So in Aramaic, um, word is Rahmane, okay? And it refers to merciful and compassionate. Uh, and then uh, the root meaning of it, which is the root word is like Rahem, R-A-N, means to love, delight in, to be kind, to be friendly. So so you see how it fits together. Okay. And so the compassionate are those who do deeds of mercy and charitable acts. Jesus taught practical compassion, and that's what we mostly focus on. Okay. Pious Easterners believe that charitable and loving acts, which spring from a compassionate heart, are God in action. And so we think about this in terms of ourselves. When we are doing acts of kindness, acts of compassion, we are God in action because we're acting from that central uh, core in us, which is the image and likeness of God. So, um, so the other interesting thing that I just thought I'd mention is if if you notice, are all of these beatitudes, they just walk together, basically. I mean, we talked about being humble, and if you are humble, you will likely have and show compassion and mercy. And the same thing as turning the other cheek, it is also offering up compassion and kindness, really. So just that's just food for thought to keep that in mind uh, as we go through these tonight. And so I, I, I found this and I thought it was quite interesting. Compassion literally means to suffer together. Among emotion researchers, it is defined as the feeling that arises when you are confronted with another's suffering and feel motivated to relieve that suffering. I found that to be very interesting and file that away as food for thought. Okay, now Dr. Lumsden, when is explaining mercy, and remember he's saying, well, we'll get to the scripture, but one of the things, uh, outstanding things of Easterners, okay, is that Easterners believe in mercy and they extend their hospitality to their neighbors, to strangers, and even to their enemies. They say, today we have plenty, but no one knows what tomorrow has in store for us. The same hand that renders help to others today may be stretched out asking for help today or tomorrow. And so in in the ancient, no, I say in the ancient Near East, but it is the Near East because it is still true today. It's not a law, it is a tradition that uh, that travelers, uh, you must, and of course this really is an ancient example, but because there were not hotels back then, and so travelers, they must have given travelers a place to stay, whether they were friend or foe, and they must protect them with their lives. Okay, even if it is an enemy. Now, there's a whole lot of beyond that. You basically, if we're talking about an enemy, um, the tradition said they were required to feed them and give them board and whatnot 3 days. Okay, and after 3 days, they had to get out of there. Um, and so I don't want to get too much into that tonight, but Dr. Lanza is has moved this in here because if you extend mercy, if they extended a place to stay, then they would they would be they would be not necessarily would they have to travel and have a place to stay, but they would be rewarded uh, somehow, some way or somehow. Okay, now, and if you I know the thoughts are going on right now, like, well, we can't take in strangers, stuff that. Well, it may not, um, there's all kinds of nuances with all of this stuff. However, it is still a tradition in the East. And in the movie that I have listed here called The Last Survivor, all right, and The Last Survivor happened with troops when they were in Afghanistan, which of course is very recent. And and you will find now you don't necessarily have to watch the whole movie if you're not into war movies because it's pretty tough. But towards the end, you will see that the last survivor, enemy of the Afghanis was taken in. So anyway, so that's how Dr. Lobster starts out with the give and take. All right. Now he also he has these gems of wisdom in this book that no matter how many times you read it, uh, it just something will jump out at you each time. So he has these two little gems of wisdom here. Uh, in this world, no one lives to himself, and no one can claim independence from others. Just as the leaves and roots of a tree depend on one another, so men need each other. You might not agree with that, you might, but that's words of wisdom from Dr. Moses. And pious Easterners take pride in sharing and almsgiving. They believe that everything comes from God for the use of his children. Okay, now let's move on to another scripture that he kind of incorporates. Um, and it's basically Luke 6:38. And it's the one that says, give, and it will be given to you. Now, George, would you like to go ahead and read this so they don't have to listen to me all the time?
Absolutely.
Okay.
All right. The universe functions by the law of giving and receiving. The oceans, seas, rivers, and brooks give water to the air to be purified by the sun and then poured out upon the earth to return to the seas again. This law is from everlasting to everlasting. Nature has never violated it. The seas have never held to their waters. The brooks have never closed their mouths. The clouds have never stored water for more than a few days or weeks. God's order never fails.
And this is style, this is Near Eastern style of writing. It's very metaphoric. Notice how he does that. All right. And then continue with that. Uh, what we have Romans 12:21. Uh, Be not overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. So go ahead, George, and read that.
Yeah. What is true of nature is also true of man. We all live in the same universe under the same universal law. And whenever we try to violate this law, we find ourselves in trouble. Even the wicked and the unbelievers return good for good and evil for evil. But good men return good for evil, feed the strangers, give water to their enemies when they are thirsty.
Good men return good for evil. That's a tough one. All right. And then he pulls in this scripture from from Matthew. Um, Go ahead, George, and read it.
Matthew 6:19 to 21. Do not lay up for yourselves treasures buried in the ground, a place where rust and moth destroy, and where thieves break through and steal. But lay up for yourselves a treasure in heaven, where neither rust nor moth destroys, and where thieves do not break through and steal. For where your treasure is, there also is your heart.
Okay. So um, he's going he's going back to um, you know the session with materialization over um, uh, spirituality, spiritual, and and so the treasures that he's speaking of are not treasures in heaven, are not material. I mean, you can build up all the material uh, wealth and whatnot in this world, but those are not treasures in heaven at all. Because remember, you can't take it with you. Okay. But treasures in heaven are our gifts to the poor and needy around us. Good deeds are rewarded with the abundant blessings of God. Now, I would be remiss to not put the golden rule in here, and I've just added some stuff. But so the golden rule is, of course, from the Bible, Matthew 7:12. Whatever you wish men to do for you, do likewise also for them. For this is the law and the prophets. Now, I put these other things in here just to show, you know, uh, especially if you look on the internet and you know when you try and you want to know stuff and you know whatever. I mean, dear God, we cannot leave anything be. We have to we have to intellectualize. We have to do whatever, and so out of that now comes the silver rule, which now this is not biblical, but the silver rule says don't treat others the way you would not want them to treat you. Now, you want to explain that to me, you can. I'm but and then of course, uh, you know, all the thinkers out there, we come up um, with the platinum rule. And the platinum rule says that we should treat people the way they want to be treated. Now, you know, um, I just, I just think, and this really, it does, this is just an example, but everything and everything, you know, everything in the Bible, uh, people are coming up with new ideas, and this means that, that means that, and so I try not to be critical. But if people would focus more on the intent of stories and the teachings and focus more on the, I'll use the word spiritual, but if they would focus more on that part of it instead of thinking of all these other things, and then they you know and they come out with new Bibles all the time. And the I just discovered today um, that I, I can't even say it right, but the new standard edition of the Bible, it's been around for not a long time. Okay, but now there's a new one. There's a new NIV whatever, and so they've taken that Bible. I don't know all the changes they've done, but they decided they needed the book of the Apocrypha. So that Bible has that. So anyway, you know, what we try to do here from the Aramaic, really and truly, is it's simple. The word Peshitta from Aramaic, it's called the Peshitta text, and that means simple. So so we try to keep it as simple as we can. But I'll tell you, it when you start looking for on the internet, and gosh, I really want to know. And have an example this week, man, and I haven't gotten back to you, about dogs and people. It's just, I mean, um, they'll do a lot of research and a lot of study, but they don't study the culture. And so all of that question about why do why did the Israelis hate dogs? Well, it's very simple. Um, It was a cultural thing. Dogs were considered unclean. And if anything is unclean, then it's untouchable and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, I just thought I'd throw that in there. It's because it is, if people try to read this stuff on their own, I don't know. It's no wonder people get confused and just don't do, you know, don't pay any attention to the Bible either. Okay, now, so all right, now I would be remiss here if we couldn't find examples, okay, and um, and this may not be exactly um, showing mercy, but actually, I mean, it is. It's compassion, and it's really returning good for evil. All right. It is a personal story that I found, and I thought that it would be pretty representative, and it would maybe help us to think about what are we talking here, returning good for evil. So, George, do you want to start reading this story?
Okay. Oh. Returning good for evil. A little over a month ago, President Barack Obama was reelected to office. In the South where I live, the majority is Republican. And as you've guessed it, everyone was a little upset. Every morning I get up, get dressed, and report to traffic duty by 6:50 a.m. As a community resource officer, many depend on me for the safety of pedestrians, children, and drivers during school hours. After the re-election of the president, I got looks that could kill. Drivers that normally spoke did not speak. I suffered attitudes that were very racist and unbecoming. I've never felt so much hate. It was as if I personally declared Barack Obama the president. Despite the attitudes of others, I held on to the one thing that mattered the most: the fact that I love God. Loving God meant that I had to be respectful, courteous, and polite to others, regardless of what was going on at this time. I had to continue to show love.
So, if we want to put this into uh, the mercy, basically, she could have responded and not returned good. She could have returned evil and said things to those people and whatnot. And so again, this all falls together. It's kind of it that's kind of like turning the other cheek too. So all part of Jesus' message, all part of the spiritual kingdom of heaven on earth. Okay. So I'm gonna kind of close uh, close out with this bit of uh, wisdom, food for thought. An individual's belief in a set of so-called correct doctrines has become more important than the acts of love, peace, mercy, compassion, and forgiveness, which are the principles and foundation of God's everlasting kingdom. Okay. Okay. Contributions are greatly appreciated. Um, there's many things that we would like to expand upon, and we keep working on it. And we do have the belief of uh, give and you will receive. Okay, and the book that we are using, of course, is The Kingdom of Heaven on Earth. George and Dr. George M. Thompson. Now, I don't like to do sales pitches or anything, and so this isn't a sales pitch, but if you really are interested in what Jesus was talking about and heaven on earth, what it, what it could be like, whatnot. It just, it's just a great book. Okay. And so, um, I placed it here also. And so our little discussion, there's a lot of stuff here. So I just, where do you stand with acts of mercy, giving and receiving, returning good for evil?